Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May meeting of the Philipstown Conservation Board. Let's start with, I think, the easiest thing, which is approval of the March minutes, right? We didn't have April until the other day. Anybody have any comments or corrections? All right, could I have a motion to approve?
So
Second.
moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We had correspondence in regard to the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival from Jan Baker, which was distributed to the board, which is essentially in favor of the endeavor. We also have a referral from the planning board for 60 Lake Surprise, which is a subdivision. I think we should reach out to the applicants and see if we need to do a site visit for it. Glenn, are you working on that, perchance? You might help us by a quick explanation. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
It's a two-lot subdivision. I'm going to say 50 acres. I don't remember
about
exactly. The smaller of the lots will be about 6 acres. There are wetlands across Lake Surprise Road from the property. It's nowhere near the stream out of Foundry Dam, but there are wetlands across the road. However, we're not improving anything in the first 100 feet or so of the road because that part's already paved. So there probably has to be some dressing up. We could use an existing driveway. There's a house on the larger lot and a large barn with an apartment in it. So we're using that road. I'd say about a third of it is going to be common, and then the rest of it is going to be on the larger lot. There are no grade issues. There are no wetlands on the property except in the southeast corner of the larger lot and well away from the new lot. That's south. I said southeast. I meant south. I should have said southwest. Also, Foundry Brook does run down through a portion or along the edge of a portion of the property. That's several hundred feet away, if not over 1,000 feet, but certainly several hundred feet away from any activity. Activity is low, doesn't get very much higher than about 40 feet above the road. And that's about the long and short of it. If I realized you were going to talk about it, I would have brought a map, but I don't.
No, I think that's okay. I mean, I think we're going to have a few site visits which are in the area. And I know after we go through 2 shorter things, I assume you're going to be discussing the Hudson Highland Reserve, what needs to be done there. So we'll schedule it all. Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody here for Park and Lesser on 53 Philipse Brook Road?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Peter Lester. I'm one of the owners. I've never been here before, so thank you. I just wanted to come and update the board on where we are with the project and talk about a few what we think are small changes that are for the good, and hopefully we are close to completion with this. As you may remember, we increased the footprint of our garage a little bit and put on a second story, but we're right by the creek there. If you remember, on the back of our house, there's a big hill. So it was kind of impossible to go backwards. So we had to increase just a little bit for the footprint. And part of that, part of the approval for that was that we would do some native planting along the creek and have a rain garden that would be fed by the 2 new downspouts that were part of the plan. So we are done with the building part. We've been done for a little while now, and we've been working on the plantings. We've done the plantings. We used all native, plantings. Max gave us some great advice to go to Catskill Native Nursery, which is a wonderful place. So thank you, Max, for that tip. We've done that along the creek. This is, I guess, on page 3 of our document that we shared, just showing where this stuff is. Of course, please come out and take a look at what we've done on that. The original plan had 2 new downspouts, but when Rainbow Gutters came out to work with us on the guttering, they felt that one of the 2 really wasn't necessary and wouldn't really work, and they were able to tie that into an existing downspout that feeds under our house in an existing drainage system that was put in by the previous owners that works quite well. We've had a lot of rain, and it's done very well. So that's good, I think. So we're left with this one downspout still, which is on the kind of the edge of the garage by the driveway, right by the walkway that goes into our house. And what we'd like to do, what we have now, is we have a large rain barrel there that can get all the rain off that one downspout, and we're going to be using that to feed a drip system for more native planting in this walkway that we're doing that goes into the front door of the house. So we were feeling like that was a good solution. A rain garden is great, but again, it means we have to bring an excavator. It's potentially more damage, to the driveway, and just a larger kind of intrusiveness into the project. But we of course wanted your good advice on if our plan's okay, and we can go forward with that, or if a rain garden is something we must do. So I'm happy to explain further but I want it to be brief.
We have any questions or comments? Because I think there's 2 ways we can go about this. One is we could all do a site visit, or I'm comfortable with just letting Max look at the site and see if that makes sense and it's functioning, and just go with his recommendations.
Well, originally, we were supposed to go into a rain garden?
Yes, a small rain garden.
Original plan, but because there were 2 downspouts that were going to be feeding that one, but because Rainbow Gutters and we felt it was better to just tie into the existing system, we felt it was maybe not necessary to have such a large rain garden with just the one downspout kind of
The
coming
issue
in.
I see is when winter comes.
I'm sorry.
Winter,
Winter?
yeah.
In terms of the freezing of
Yeah, the water's
the
gonna
rain barrel.
go, that's gonna freeze and the water's gonna go right on the ground. But I haven't been on site yet, so I'll leave it to him. That's just for an FYI for you.
Good thing to think about. We're expecting it to feed, like I said, a drip system of more native planting.
Not in winter though.
but not in
In
winter.
the summer, yeah.
Right. So I'd be happy to get a little advice on that.
Are we all comfortable with handing it over to Max?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll work with Max, and we'll...
Okay, so
Okay.
you'll contact
Yeah,
us
I'll
to...
come out, I'll look at I think I'll just look at the condition of the plantings, and then, if it's one downspout, even if it was just containing, the rain barrel contained water over the winter from that one downspout, hopefully. Do you have a sense of how much water you're collecting out of that area?
I don't know any way of measuring that, but, it's a fairly large garage, I have to admit, but it's only, again, that one side. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the original thought was with the plan was to just, allow the rain garden to take any additional impervious surface and infiltrate it. And if you were able to tie into this existing system, but then have this one downspout left, then if you can contain that water with within that one rain barrel, then I think that's pretty reasonable, especially if you're reusing it on the property.
Yeah, we have not found that it's like flown over the edge of the rain barrel. It's quite large.
You've
and
been through a winter with this, right?
Yeah, we installed it, last summer, I guess.
So what was your experience with?
It was good. The thing has two faucets, which then we tie into a hose and, for watering the plants and stuff that are out there. So that's what we've been doing. But I didn't see any kind of overflow. But we had that massive rainstorm in July last year, which flooded the creek and washed out our bridge. But I wasn't paying attention too much to the rain barrel at that point. I was trying to get in and out of my house. But but I think it's pretty good. It's a very large rain barrel. But you can come and have a look, of course.
Yeah, I don't see any issue moving forward with that, but yeah, I'll take a look. Yeah.
Okay, great. So you'll contact us, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, am I pronouncing it right? Evan Liaskos? Liaskos, okay. How are you tonight?
So I want to provide the, actually, I'll go with Mike. Wanted to provide the board with an update as to the site plan and what the status was. I did get a new septic approval from the county based on a new septic design plan, which reduced the amount of fields that was required because it's a Fuji system. So that met with the requirements of the board that to be 100 feet from the newly delineated setbacks of the wetlands. I think, Max, you had come and done that. So we had lost space, but because of the Fuji type system, it doesn't require as much fields. So the new plans show that, and the county did approve the new plans, actually based on a 5-bedroom. The main purpose of also me being here, I just want to seek clarification on the details of the soil sample testing request. Just wanted to get some exact details as far as what the board is requesting or requiring for that.
Max? Let me-
I mean, the first thing, I mean, the logical thing, I think, would be that your neighbor brought in some, photos of a lot of construction debris and asphalt and things like that. And I think the board wanted to weigh out, or I would hope the board would consider testing for things that would potentially be leaching from those types of materials, and also consider potentially having you remove those materials and just replace that fill with other fill for that area.
And now I will clarify, what was brought in there was dirt. There was some concrete, that just solid pieces of concrete that were brought in. The area that goes, I am building this house for myself, and the area I filled in is directly over where my personal well is going to be, where myself, my wife, my kids will be drinking out of. If that's worth anything, I'm not just a developer looking to put someone else in there, but obviously I wouldn't put anything in that would poison myself. The dirt did come from Ansville Creek when they were building a bridge project, which is a state project, and they were regrading, and they needed to dispose of the dirt that was essentially a tributary of the Hudson River. It was at the intersection of Albany Post Road and Sprout Brook Road when the state replaced a bridge by Rohook Deli or Jim Reed's Truck Sales. You guys might know that. So that's where the dirt came from. It was, that was brought in. The concrete was chunks of sidewalk that went underneath. So yeah.
Do you have any photos of any of what went in there at all? Like any kind of like documentation to show what went in there?
I do not.
By chance?
I
thought
no,
maybe you
I
would.
do not. There are a few pieces of concrete that you can actually, that are visible. Yeah, that were visible.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see some of it sticking out.
Most of it was dirt because that's what was available, that they were willing to truck in and pat down for me. So it worked, that's why I went with that option.
At one time, we were talking about for the neighbor that's down the hole there,
Yep.
you were gonna put some kind of dry well there?
Correct, yep, that is gonna be there. I also do have videos. The neighbor was concerned that there was water pooling up. The water that was pooling was mostly on my property. However, I did take videos during those biblical rains that we had over this summer, which was a good thing, actually, Max. When you came out, it wasn't long after those biblical rains that you came and did the redelineation of the wetlands. So I did take videos that there was the downspout of the neighbor feeds right into that area, as well as there is water coming directly off the main road that permeates through almost like a small, I don't want to call it a stream, but definitely it made ruts in his lawn, and that fed right to that area, and that wasn't coming through my yard. That was going off the main roadway, through his yard, and into that area. So I don't know how I could take responsibility. I absolutely will take responsibility for mine, which that will get solved in the fact that the driveway has its own drainage system that then leads to the back of the property. But
Any of these plans?
Yeah, I believe it's, no, the other set of plans had the other set of plans had the details on the driveway. This one would just had the septic details on it. The last set of plans that was in, that I believe was in the possession of the board. I don't know if we still have those, or I can get another copy of the old set. That shows the drainage of rainwater and things like that.
So I think our two main concerns are going to be do some form of soil testing so we know what's, excuse me, what's there.
Yeah.
And while, your septic is now outside of the buffer, I do think we also do have a concern that since you're building a house, that drainage is proper and filtered if it's going to go into, I guess that's a Sprout Brook.
Yeah. I believe it was not it was not set to go into, right, and it's on the other set of plans. It's not on the ones I brought with me because more I was just presenting the septic. But yeah, it was brought out to a daylight, so it was not at all draining into Sprout Brook itself.
We also talked about the expansion area, and I think it was you or your engineer said you were gonna talk to Putnam County to get a waiver on that, so we wouldn't rip down a bunch of trees?
Yep. So we don't even need to do that because the new main fields and the expansion fields don't even come close to those trees at all. If you look at the numbers, from what my engineer explained to me, that the Fuji system is one of the more advanced septic systems right now. In fact, if you build a house, I was told, on Lake George, you are mandated to put that system in there and nothing else will suffice according to Lake George rules, which obviously they keep. It was approved for a 5-bedroom septic by Putnam County, and I'm actually only building a 4-bedroom, so essentially it's overbuilt. But
The health department's okay with it, right?
Oh, health department, there's stamped plans, and I also have the new approval. Yeah, those obviously are copies of the original plans. I have the original stamped ones. So the clarification that I was really seeking was, what exact tests does the board require on the soil test? Because from what I understand, this is not my expertise. I can cook. Is there a specific company that the board requires me to use? Is there a certain test? Is there a name of a test? I don't want to just call someone and say, hey, we need a soil test. Like, what are they testing for? Heavy metals, petroleum, both?
I think you should, this is my suggestion, would be to go to the DEC Materials Management out of Region 3 in New Paltz and describe to them what you filled the area with and what the potential concerns could be.
I'm sorry, so DEC Materials Management?
Yeah, Region 3, which is out of New Paltz.
Region 3 at New Paltz. Okay.
And then
So I guess, our concerns would be, my guess is you're probably not going to find heavy metals in there. I don't know what general contaminants, obviously, petroleum-based products is probably going to be the biggest finding, because even asphalt itself is a petroleum-based product.
Well, I did not, there's no asphalt in there, it's a concrete.
Concrete, okay. I thought
Yeah,
there was
no,
some
I-
asphalt
no,
as
no,
well.
no. Yeah, no, I wasn't putting asphalt in there. That wasn't, again, because I'm building this house for myself, and I knew where the well was destined to be based on where the other wells in the area are. That was done probably 15, 20 years ago.
in all reality, you could do this testing, you could show that, whatever the conditions of the test will show, reference ranges and all that, but I think the reality is too also that this was filled with materials that we wouldn't necessarily want to see there. Would it be prudent just to have you pull the soil back, take the concrete out, and fill it with more soil, you know?
Yeah, it's really not a big deal. Now, and I'm happy that there's not much concrete there. When I first started, I was gonna fill it in with again, big chunks of sidewalk, and then when I came across the dirt was available, it was just clean clean dirt, and it was actually wet stuff, so it would pack nicely, knowing that I was gonna, put a lawn over there and build a hillside. I made sure I switched over to that product. I have no problem digging up, pulling it out, and, but more so for the soil test, like, you want soil test for petroleum, that's no problem, and then, test for heavy metals as well. Okay.
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds to, I mean, the best case scenario in my mind would be to test now, take everything out and test again, and then
Okay.
call it a day.
Yeah.
Is there a specific company that you guys want me to use, or a specific name of a test?
We do not recommend a particular vendor, because that would be a conflict of
Okay, no, I
interest.
didn't know if you recommend or require. I didn't know if it was in
Yeah.
town code,
No,
board code.
no, I understand.
This
The
is,
DEC, which usually has a bunch of names of people you could contact.
yeah, no, and they do, as I started to do my research, and then I realized that, at the advice of somebody said, you know what, ask the board if they have a specific company or that they require. That's really where I'm at, and why I wanted to clarify this in person, because I knew it couldn't be done by email, so that's why I had to request this meeting.
So I would just ask too that you just keep me updated and Greg updated if we're moving forward with that plan, so that he knows that you're going out there and you're doing things on the property, the machines and all of that.
That was gonna be my next question is, so I do have a stop work order on there, and how do I do that without without violating my,
The board, I think Andy, if we can write a memo to Greg.
Yep,
Telling him
we can do that.
what we discussed tonight, and then, if you can just keep us in the loop
okay,
on next steps, we'll move forward that way, so that Greg's completely aware of what your activities are on the parcel.
okay, so, yeah, I'll probably use, because for an old company I used to have, my father used to have, I'll probably use advanced testing, just because we have an account with them, and, I'll call them up, and they'll just take random samples from around the property, and just random samples, they combine them together and see how to,
I would focus just on the area that you know that you filled.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That's what I'm saying is, do you want me to take like one sample every, say, 20 feet or 10 feet, or just, I know it all came from the same area, but is there a specific
Well, you have a sense
requirement?
of how deep you filled, right? So you can, go down to that depth, and
Okay.
then maybe work your way up in a couple
Okay.
different areas, yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, I have no problem, because I know where it came from, so I'm not worried at all. It was mostly, mud and muck that was, trees and leaves and everything that's at the bank of a stream
Yeah.
that flows up and down. Okay, so I'll reach out to DEC Materials Management, ask them if they, should
I
I,
think if you did that in an email, that'd probably be best, just so we have a record of that. And,
Okay.
That way.
That makes sense.
all right, so
way.
should I be asking them, do you want me to ask them for a site visit? Do you want me to ask them just,
I would say, I would describe your situation,
okay,
I don't know, and then have, just say, here's what I filled with. I'd like a general test just to make sure I can know that,
It's safe.
it's safe to put a
Okay.
well here.
yeah, listen, it's my own, I'm gonna be drinking out of that myself, I don't want any, obviously to get poisoned, I'm not just a developer looking to build this house and flip it and sell it. Okay, and then,
Other thoughts, Andy, on that?
No, and I think we also need to balance removal of what that's going to cost too, once we find out what's in the soil.
Okay.
Because if it's benign, then we might want to do less rather than more.
yeah, I mean,
So-
the pieces that are of concrete that are there's a few that are still exposed, there's not much that really was covered up. I can pull those out, it's really not a big deal, I'll bring an excavator with a grapple in there, scoop them out, and it's really not a big deal. They were gonna get covered over anyway when I brought more soil in, obviously I stopped for stop work order reasons. So I can, if there's no contamination at all, even near them, is it okay if they're covered up, because then it's just general fill, clean, chunks of concrete fill, or, was there
I think that's a discussion we're gonna have to have with Greg and the rest of the board.
Yeah, I think first let's get the soil testing done.
okay,
And
so I'll
that'll
just,
give us an idea.
so if I call advanced testing, you guys are okay with that, and,
Yep.
it'd be advanced, or if, I assume that they do soil testing, because they did all kinds of aggregate testing for us, but if not, I will find another company that does that and pull samples and get those. Do you want me to email the board or Cheryl or with the results and?
Yeah, let's start with the memo, and then once that, we'll make sure you have a copy of that, and then that'll be the beginning of the whole process. And then
Okay.
we can start corresponding back and forth after that.
Okay, so after the soil test, just to circle back and clarify, so soil test, then potentially remove any of the pieces of concrete that are there, and then dig down and do some more soil tests as well. I will ask that I may have to request being able to stabilize the ground a little bit, because right now it's all stabilized. At this point, it's been sitting there for 2 years. As I dig around, obviously, I'm destabilizing things, so it might be more than just a little soil test. I might have to put in, some more. I want to do more than just silt fence. Again, I don't want to have a problem with the neighbor complaining that water came over, even though he's got his own water issues as well, and he's blaming it on me, but that's neither here nor there. I just want to make sure that that Greg is okay with me also stabilizing things up if I dig down, because obviously by virtue I'll be destabilized.
I feel like the testing won't be that intrusive, right? You're gonna take small.
Well, that's what I said. I thought you said you wanted me to dig down, 15, 20 feet.
Four samples,
Yeah, they're not
right?
gonna be big.
Yeah, it's gonna be narrow. It's not gonna be a giant, it's not gonna be like a test hole for a septic
Oh,
or
okay, so
something.
you don't need it with an excavator digging down, they just, I guess they do,
No.
I don't know how this stuff
It's
works.
like a
At
tube.
this point, until you
Yeah.
get that done, then
Yeah.
go after it.
Okay, so just basic surface testing initially?
They're gonna advise you, talk to the DEC, we're gonna write this memo.
Okay.
It'll be clear, you talk to the DEC, you ask them, here's what I did, you're gonna tell them what you did, how much you filled, and then you're gonna tell them that the board has asked for testing at, various depths, and you probably just take an auger
Okay.
and make holes at
Okay,
those
so it's
depths.
an auger test, okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. That's all, I just wanted to clarify exactly what the board was looking for, because I'm an amateur at this, and you guys are the better ones. So.
Do you know the source of where the concrete came from? Was it just
Yeah.
like random source or?
No, it was, it was at the corner of where Coles is, at Route 6 and Westbrook Drive, by, close to Home Depot and Coles, Wendy's right over there. They replaced that sidewalk. And so there was some chunks there, and I said, good, that'll serve a good base. And that's what was brought in.
So it's from a sidewalk, not from like an old construction?
No,
where
no, no, no.
Asbestos might have been on it or
No,
something?
no, it was the sidewalk when they had to replace the sidewalk there for whatever reason. So that's where it came from.
Any other comments or suggestions? Okay, we'll put together a memo for you.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Hudson Highland Reserve. Thank you. What's that?
Glenn and Watson from Beatty and Watson. We're here to seek a permit for the outfall of the storm drainage system from the Hudson Highlands Reserve that we're working towards our final approvals. Essentially, if I can,
Take the mic.
if I may hand this up, this is the same thing I have up. Actually, yes, and I just wanted, it might be easier for me to see.
Excellent.
So I should say I'm here tonight with Margaret McManus from our office. She's our engineer, and she thought I needed a babysitter after all these years of getting on. So, any rate, this drawing, if you were up close, you could see it, and maybe you can see there are some blue lines that connect the drainage structures. And that map shows you all of the drainage that will be collected, treated, partially infiltrated, and eventually reach Clove Creek in a clean and treated condition. There are infiltration beds, which basically work the same as a septic system. They hold the water leaches into the ground. There, of course, are overflows and stuff like that to handle extraordinary circumstances. There's at least one, and I'd have to count if there is others, of Filtera units, which are basically manholes that have the equipment in there to filter the water as it goes through the process too. So what we're essentially doing is sending the water through this system, treating the water, storing and infiltrating water along the way, and what we can't handle, we don't want to deliver into Clove Creek. And that is, if you look to the, kind of in the middle towards the top of that drawing, you can see where Clove Creek goes under the bridge. That's that new bridge they just built last year or so. When the state was there, they raised the bridge, changed the grade a little bit, so that affected us. And it affected the commercial building on our project. We affected that drainage. They did some repairs that affected that drainage. So there was water coming off of the highway, and there's water flowing from north to south in the gutter and ditch along the highway. So what we've done as part of our plan is we've captured some of the water that has been flowing off of the commercial building on our project, and treated that stormwater as well, and eventually it outfalls into the same channel that the state was draining the highway. That channel comes along the easterly side of Route 9. It flows to the south. It goes past the entrance to the commercial building on our property. It will go past the road we're intending to build, and then it enters a riprap channel that's already there. Part of our plan for this is to enlarge the riprap channel because we think it's too small, extend it so there'll be even more treatment, build up the sides that weren't built up when the state put that riprap in. Riprap has only been in since the bridge was built. So I'm going to turn this over. I don't have copies of this for you, but this may be something you can see. This is the commercial building is here on this project. There's the proposed road is here. The drainage is, I can take this off, I guess, sorry. The drainage collects in the drainage system. It's treated in a basin here. It's treated in a new basin that's going to be a new infiltration system that's going to be behind the commercial building. And eventually it gets to these two manholes, one of which is a Filtera unit, and it gets released into the same channel in a metered fashion, and it flows along Route 9, and then it enters this enlarged, riprap swale that we're enlarging, more than doubling the size of it, and eventually it'll go down and enter into Clove Creek. And we're seeking the permit to do that.
So, am I to believe you had a pre-meeting with the DEC in regard to this?
I don't,
We sent in paperwork and we're waiting to have that.
And from my knowledge, it almost seems like, when you were doing the initial plans for the CEQA review, wouldn't you have been calculating this additional runoff?
yes, we did. We did do the initial stormwater
Right.
Pollution prevention plan. We did do
Right.
initial drainage. Of course, all those things change in between, but essentially we always plan to get water to this position. there's really no choice. I mean, it's the only place that you can, you got a high point in the middle. Some flows to the south, some flows to the north. We're taking the water that flows to the north.
What was the conversation, what was your correspondence with the DEC regarding?
So we've sent in similar plans to this, and, you know, Hi, Margaret McManus. So we've sent in similar plans, and we're setting up a pre-meeting, and then we'll just bring the application to them too.
So are you talking about, is the application to discharge water into the stream, or is it because you're within 100 foot from their
So
wetland?
we'll need a bed and banks permit, and we'll need a, something of waters, I can't remember it. Yeah, protection of waters permit. So those are the two permits that we'll need from the DEC. So,
So it has nothing to do with wetlands. This is all Article 15 stream. There's no, you're not encroaching on.
well, it is, I mean, when I spoke with them, that's what the two permits that Sarah told me that we needed. You know Sarah from the DEC. So when we have the meeting, if they need another permit, I'll apply for that too. It is, we've delineated it as a wetland, but it's really a watercourse, and I don't know if there are actual wetland plants along there. I mean, there's a very steep slope, and then the stream is at the bottom of it. So this, what we're proposing, you know, the SWIP's been developed, we are actually discharging less
I mean, do
water.
we have a signed, is there a finalized SWIP? Like, have we signed anything?
It's not finalized.
So then, I guess I'm kind of confused about the
Yeah,
process
I was
here.
about to ask, are we putting the, sort of the, what's the cliche?
Do we
The
need-
cart before the horse? Thank you.
No, the SWIP is the last piece of the puzzle, because it depends on the final design that gets approved. And so if you do the SWIP and then the DEC or you come and say, oh, no, we want you to change this, we have to change that, we have to go back and redo the SWIP. We had the same discussion during the secret process, but that's really the reason the SWIP comes last.
So a preliminary SWIP was developed and reviewed by Ron, but it has to be finalized while we're doing the design of all of the drainage system.
Yeah, but
So-
the SWIP too, they take into consideration, your discharge locations,
Yes,
wetlands impacts.
yes.
Oh, so
So-
I, like, if we make
There's
it.
no increase in runoff. It's actually a decrease in runoff. We're infiltrating a great deal on site so that we're mimicking the existing conditions. There are, there's several places where water makes its way to the creek. And we've mimicked most of that, but we do have to capture what's along the road, and what's captured along the road needs to discharge at the lowest point. So this is the discharge of the
But
drainage
if we
system.
say, no, I mean, if we say we don't, if the board doesn't agree with this location, then how do you move forward?
Water goes to the lowest point. There's, like, the only other thing I can do is have less disturbance on this slope. We've disturbed this slope and make it more gentle because I want to pull the discharge pipe as far away from the creek as possible. I can discharge close to the creek at the same elevation and not disturb this slope. That can happen. But this is a better overall design
So we're talking
because,
about, like, minuscule changes, but this is the area where we're talking, like, this is the final.
yeah, it's just at the entrance.
Gotcha.
The required statement speaks to that very question, and if I want to just take a second, go back to this plan. Where was, I guess I got it up this way. Yes. If you if you take a look at this bank, if you go, or just even drive it by, look at the bank on the Fishkill side of Clove Creek, and you'll see that it is very steep immediately outside the creek. It's very steep, it rises, I know for certain, well over 80 feet, and I think even higher. And it does it immediately at its intersection with Route 9. There's only this narrow spot. The notion that we could relocate the drainage to a different point to enter Clove Creek, the topography and geography of that site really precludes that possibility.
Yeah,
And-
you can see that the site is quite constrained. The road doesn't exist now, if my memory serves me. It's been a while since I've,
That's correct. The road does not exist. The driveway into the commercial building exists, and there was at one point, there's basically a big ditch right between the road and the creek that was at some point when Mr. Lyons owned the property, he was planning a road there and did some excavation. But we're taking advantage of that by using it to infiltrate.
so I think what makes sense at this point is to do a site visit. Is the road, is the bottom section of the road staked out?
I don't think it is. If you want it staked out, we can do
That
that.
would help us as well as.
Sure.
I know parts of the road, because this goes back quite a few years now, there were steep embankments that were being built. What's down once we get within, 200 feet or so is the bottom of the road? Is it still embanked?
Stake the first 200 feet or so.
Yeah, but I'm also asking how, I guess we'll see, but we're going to want to know how much is it being raised up from what the grade is now?
Actually,
I make myself
on
clear?
the plans that you received,
There was an elevation.
this is the
Yep.
profile of the road. So we're cutting for the first 800 feet, or actually farther than that. We're cutting for like the first 1,000 feet, and then
So
we're
you're actually
filling.
cutting rather than building. I don't know why I thought, I was remembering
We're
building
cutting
up.
and then we're filling. And if you remember the plan, there were many retaining walls as you went up. So we're able to change the grade because the equestrian center has been removed from the plan. So we can change the grades a little, and there's a lot less disturbance for we don't need the walls. So that's a big improvement.
So I think a site visit is going to help us. Right?
I'm having a hard time visualizing it, so.
Yeah. I think what we need to do is a site visit.
So the road itself is not in the wetlands buffer.
Right. No, we understand that. We understand it's a channel. I mean, I guess the only concern, I guess part of the concern too is, and I'm going to assume this is going to be far better engineered than what was done at Glastonbury Court. They had a flat area and there were major problems with drainage, mainly because it was not maintained.
They had,
Major problems of basically silt getting into the creek because of,
oh, okay.
so I think that is going to be a concern of ours, but, you're engineering this from day one, and I know there's going to be a homeowners association. So I think also start thinking about, down in this area, what type of maintenance is going to be to safeguard as well.
Do you foresee any changes to the drainage plan outside of the wetland buffer that would pertain to the SWIP?
I'm sorry.
Do you see any changes coming up in the future that would pertain to the drainage plan? That would be more pertinent to the
So we've been
SWIP?
developing the SWIP and the drainage plan and the HydroCAD model simultaneously.
Okay.
So this is the plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other?
I did want to point out also that 100 feet off of the stream is this wetland buffer line, but in the existing condition, you'll see that there's a ridge here, way back here, and this all drains away from the stream. So it's really a very small area that drains towards the stream.
anything that drains off in that back spot that you just mentioned, where does that go? It goes,
Here, this way?
yeah.
So there's a detention pond here. It's not even in, so there's gonna be a little detention pond, that will overflow. There are several bioretention areas throughout the site here. There are also some spots where we've put underground infiltrators, basically to capture the clean runoff on the mountainside that's coming down in before it hits the project site. So that's all being captured. It's clean water. We're trying to keep that on site. There are overflows for heavier storm events, but basically the model keeps everything nearly contained even for a 100-year storm event. So, so it's not, this is just the end point. The end point happens to be where the wetlands is.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I think we should schedule a site visit, and I think this one might help if Ron Gaynor was there as well.
Yes.
I would like to be there.
Yeah, well, obviously. Somebody's in it. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, I believe last but not least is Garrison Golf Club Land Development District, AKA Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. I just want to make a preamble to the board. We are focusing on a wetland permit, which also will consist of a mitigation and maintenance plan. I know this project is anywhere from being divisive to controversial in the town. I really need to ask all the members whether you're for, against, or ambivalent, that we're fair balanced in this, because we're here for something that's very, very narrow in scope. So if somebody feels they can't be fair balanced, then I would ask them to recuse themselves. Otherwise, I think we need to focus on, they need to shift the roadway a little bit. And then we have this pond, what are we gonna do with it, and how are we gonna maintain it? And part of their mitigation plan, as they'll further discuss, calls for various plantings. They're also stripping soil from 2 areas that are heavily contaminated. So, with that, it's all yours.
Hey, good evening. Adam Stellaro from Cy Paget and Roselle. So we've been before the board a couple of months in a row now. At our March meeting, we presented and discussed the details of the proposed disturbance and the mitigation plan. Based on comments that we received from the board at that meeting, we submitted a revised mitigation and monitoring plan at the beginning of April. Then we had a joint public hearing with the Conservation Board and the Planning Board on the 18th of April. We submitted another revised mitigation and monitoring plan on the 26th of April, and further revisions on the 1st of May. So we appreciate that the board has been, very communicative in terms of what else you needed to see in the mitigation and monitoring plan. And we understand that the board is going to continue its public hearing at the June meeting. And so we hope to really tonight just answer any questions or comments you have on the current proposal and the mitigation and monitoring plan as it's been revised.
Does anybody want to go first?
The question I have is about the filtera systems. I don't see the maintenance of those in the plan.
Okay, Margaret McManus from Beatty and Watson is the one who designed those systems. They're not part of the mitigation. They're part of the on-site water handling system. They just happen to be in the wetland buffer So they're not being put in as part of the mitigation.
They're gonna drain into the buffer, am I correct?
I'll let Margaret answer that.
That's what the letter said, that they're gonna drain into the buffer after, after they go through the Filterra.
Hi, Margaret McManus with Beatty and Watson. So the Filtrera units are basically bioretention areas that are inside of a vault. So they, yeah,
understand
okay.
that. My question
So the
was about-
maintenance is, you actually, you take the grate off and you rake it, and every 2 years you replace the media. Usually there's a maintenance agreement with the company that you buy the Filtrera from. We could put it in as part of the plan, I'm sure.
Yeah, as part of the plan, because the water's gonna run into the buffer. As long as you
Yes,
guys
they-
are aware of it and
yes.
it gets written in there.
Yeah.
Because
So it
they're
goes-
pretty, they look like a pretty nice system.
They are.
But they got, even with all their, they've got the maintenance manual here.
Yep.
It's very finicky and it has to be done correctly.
Yeah. So we've installed them at a
That's part
couple of other
of the,
sites.
part of the long plan that we're gonna come up with, and
Isn't already in the SWIP, would the maintenance requirements for the Filterra be part of the SWIP?
It probably would be part of the SWIP, yes.
Can it be referenced in here, just
We
so that
we can make a reference to it
yeah, belt and suspenders,
in the mitigation and monitoring plan, yes.
thanks.
thank you.
You have other comments? All right, I'm going to give my thoughts. Originally, I was very concerned of what's the pond going to be like when it's dropped 4 feet. And I took a walk around it and photographed it extensively last Sunday. And my opinion is that whether it has 4 feet of water in it, where it normally was, or it's down 4 feet, we're dealing with, I'm going to call it an ornamental pond. There is some wildlife value to it, but I don't think there's tremendous value to it. So my feeling is I personally have no problem with the planting plan, but I think in areas it needs to be expanded because the northern end is almost drained right now, and I believe that should become a marsh, if you will. And I think that the maintenance / mitigation plan is going to need to speak to the use, which it does a little bit right now, of invasive control. A lot of it you're not going to get away with just using, whether you're burning or pulling out. You're going to end up having to use chemicals. There's just no way around it. And I think that you should, at this point, and that'll probably be permitted separately at a time when you need to do that, but I do think that should be included in the plan. Because I think, I believe originally that pond was constructed for 3 reasons. One is it was a very wet spot when they were building a golf course. So let's do something with it. Number 2 is, in agricultural terms, I'll call it a water hold. It was used for irrigation. And 3 is, I'm not a golfer, but I guess water hazards and their look are part of what's going on. So, in my mind, it functions somewhat, but originally, I was saying to myself, well, what can we really do to make this somewhat pristine? I don't think that's possible. I think it's, in my mind, it's an ornamental. So I'm more concerned with the northern section. I think it needs to be planted further, so you're going to end up with a marsh, because right now there's almost no water in there, so why fight it? Just make it easier on yourself. I am also interested in what might be able to be done below the dam, because that's the true functioning area of the watercourse / wetland. In terms of the dam, I'm not an engineer. With the lower level of water, I'm sure the dam is going to hold. The question becomes, again, it does not need to be addressed in an initial wetland permit, but what's going to happen in the long term is that The dam is not only acting as a dam now, it's acting as a roadway. So while it's not necessarily the purview at this moment of the Conservation Board to totally worry about the structural integrity as a roadway, I think at some point that's going to need to be answered. But my feeling is I was more critical of this until I did this walk the other day, and I think that, the project is doable, but there's some details that need to be filled in.
So, just for the benefit of the board, the lowering of the water is not part of this project. It was lowered in order to make sure that the dam continues to function safely. And so with or without this project, the pond level is where it is. So, from the beginning of the secret process, which we went through 3 years before the planning board, this has, the proposed mitigation plan of basically planting a 2-foot strip around the pond area has been the mitigation that we're proposing for the wetland disturbance. So, and then when we came before this board, since March, we've added at the board's request a 10-foot buffer area around the pond where we're going to be taking stock of the invasives that are in that area and doing an initial removal, probably, depending on what the condition of the invasives that are on the ground, would, maybe removing a lot of soil around the edge of the pond. But we're up at, when you take that into account, we're at over 3-to-1 mitigation ratio for this. So I think, my client would be open to looking at how to move things around within the plan. We're not looking, I think, at going over what what the client has already committed to in terms of that ratio, which is extensive in our position for a relatively small disturbance to a wetland buffer area near a driveway. But our interest is in keeping this project on track time-wise. The planning board currently has until June 20th to vote under state law. They've got a timeline after the public hearing by which they have to make a decision. And the town code specifies that this board make its decision before the planning board make its decision. So to the extent that we can look at these things on a fairly expeditious basis and shift things around, that's a conversation we're willing to have with Max and with the board. We just can't really afford to have multiple rounds of revisions at this point that represent a drastic change in what's being proposed.
I don't think you were asking
No,
for that.
I'm
right?
not at
No, I
all.
don't think he's asking for that at all.
As I said, my big concern that's not addressed in the plan, I'm not talking about maintenance or mitigate.
Okay.
It's actually in the drawings. Basically, the northern end of the pond, it's not going to function. I'm going to we'll call it a bioreactor. It's going to end up being a cyanobacter, a blue-green algae mess. That is really not a big deal to make into a marsh with plantings. Right? I mean, it would be better, period. And I would like to see...
Easier to maintain, too.
Yeah, and I'd like to see more detail in this, in the mitigation plan. So we're talking about the maintenance and we're talking about potential use of herbicides, because I think you're going to need to use it, and you'll come back when you need to use it for a separate permit for that.
Okay.
We do speak a little bit about it in the
Yeah.
plan, as you know, and I think that was at your recommendation or the board's recommendation that we do include some, or that option. We call it like a Plan B option, right? We're committed to doing this mechanically, and if there's some avenue that we can work with Max, I don't know if there's administrative wetland permit where if we need to come back and spot treat with herbicides with a more detailed plan than what we have here today in terms of herbicide treatment, perhaps, I don't know if that's an option, but we don't have, I'd like to see how it goes with the mechanical means, because as you walked around the pond, and I walked around it yesterday, there's a lot of multiflora, there's a lot of shrubs. The best way to get rid of that is to pull it. So we're going to be doing some earthwork there. I'd like to do and strip that whole area, bring it back to grade with new soil from the site, replant it, and see how it goes. And if we get resprouting of mugwort, which is, I'm sure you saw, which was more involved than I initially thought. I think it's certainly more present than I had remembered. Then I think we would come back or seek some sort of administrative permit. But I would like to have an opportunity to revise the report, to provide maybe some additional information on herbicide treatment, perhaps enough that would get you comfortable that we could perhaps not have to come back to a full board permit and work with Max once we bring in a licensed applicator, if that had to occur.
Right, that's most likely going to be a separate permit later on.
Right, but
Yeah.
would that be a permit before the planning board, or would it be a permit
No, it
working
would
with
be
Max?
before us. I don't think you're connected to New York State wetland, because then what is it, Article 24, 25, I forgot which,
No,
24.
it's not a 24.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a separate issue.
This would be a separate season too that we're
Yeah.
talking about, because you're doing mechanical means now. You're
Right.
gonna see how it goes, and then it would
Yeah.
be a permitted use
Right,
of
It's
herbicide.
later.
So that would be later.
okay.
So that we can move, because what I would like to see happen is, I want us to be ready at the continuation of the public hearing, which is next month's meeting,
Yeah.
that we can vote on this.
Or you have to, right? Because the clock is on.
Yeah, I mean, there's other ways here or there, but I don't see a reason to drag this on, so
Were
I
you
just,
thinking of reconfiguring where they would get the most benefit for their mitigation? You know, is that what you were alluding to, the north end of the pond?
Yeah, the north
area
end.
outside of the dam? Maybe not focusing around this like 2-foot buffer or 12-foot
Yeah.
buffer now, but maybe taking
Yeah, I
that square
mean,
footage and putting it somewhere?
yeah, you're saying it very well, because some of the area, now that the pond is dropped, I think particularly on the west side, some of it you have a lot of rock rubble, and that's not going to be easy to plant.
Yeah, the idea, I agree with you, and the idea we had there was to install the core logs, and then like a 12-inch diameter core log, stake it in right at the water elevation, and then bring in soil behind it, plant in that because of the gravel condition. But if you're willing for us to relocate some of those plants to the north end, and you're willing to see that gravel bank remain a gravel bank, I don't think we have a problem with that. I tend to agree that that's what that northern lobe is going to be, is
Yeah,
more of a marsh.
Right, and where a lot of the
Whether it happens
areas,
naturally or through us
yeah,
planting
and
it.
where the area that you have we'll call it rubble or the rock shore, if my memory serves me, it's mainly towards the north middle, and that's where you have a retaining wall, not far, a large retaining wall above the pond.
I mean,
So
I kind of
it's-
feel that it's pretty stony throughout the entire
Right,
perimeter.
but I'm talking about that you have the path for the golf carts, and then you have a retaining wall that goes up. It's at least 10 feet beyond it. And I think there you might be getting into Herculean efforts.
Yeah, and there's
And it
also,
would be
there's
better
some
used
areas,
someplace else.
as I walked it the other day, that are steeper banks that we could say, hey, hands off, we're just going to let that be. We'll take those plantings, we'll stick them in the north end.
The only comment I had, you brought it up about the blue-green algae and that, like when the water level is so low and then it's gonna be warm, it's gonna be basically, really growing like crazy in the middle of the summer. So is there some way to mitigate that, like?
Well, I think maybe what we should ask for within this is a monitoring plan for the first couple seasons to see what water testing, what it's like. And if it needs to be treated, you'll come in, if it needs to be chemically treated, which is a separate permit, again, to treat the pond like we see with different lakes around here.
We're talking about the water itself.
Yeah, but I think put in this, there should be a plan for the first probably 3 years initially to be able to test the water and see how it goes. I mean, it might thrive if we marsh the one northern section, the rest of it might thrive.
The report fits to a 5 to 7 year monitoring.
Right.
So we're gonna
Right, but we're talking about monitoring
That
of
would be
water,
that would be
water within the pond.
testing added to
You know.
this, I guess.
Or, you know, so in other words, it would be like oxygenation, right? Because with lack of oxygenation, what's left is gonna probably eutropify. So it's just a few safeguards, so if we're running into a problem, what are you gonna need to do to cure it?
How deep is this section that is like the deepest part of the remaining lake that you estimate?
6 feet.
Yeah, it's about
6 feet? Okay.
6
So
feet
is
in
it
the
worth
southern
putting
portion.
some type of aeration system in there as a precaution?
So again, I just want to go back to the fact that the pond, whether, you know, at its current depth, will exist with or without the project that's being proposed. So we're not, you know, in terms of the health of that water body, we're looking at it as an opportunity to create habitat around the edge of the pond that's going to be more valuable than what was there before, and certainly more valuable than what would be there without this project. So I don't.
That, I'm just
yeah.
thinking, I'm just talking, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean-
what's best for the water area? I mean, you're gonna have public, you know, the public there, people are gonna go near the pond. I mean, don't you want it to be clean? So maybe aeration, consider aeration, that's all I'm mentioning.
I can definitely take it back and discuss it with the client.
Yeah, I mean, essentially aeration would come after there's been water testing done over time. And if aeration is needed, I mean, nowadays with the technology that exists, you're not talking about something that's particularly costly.
No, not for something like that.
Right. So we're not, I don't think we're saying we want aeration now. It's a matter of water testing over probably the first 3 seasons, how the pond progresses. You know, we're not expecting a thriving, pristine water body from this. But at the same time, we really don't want to end up with a pond that's completely filled with blue-green algae, you know?
And you're open to the
And
public, right? So-
unsightly and
Yeah.
smelly.
Public
Correct.
place,
Exactly.
so-
Yeah,
and
you
you're
don't want it to
making
be smelly
changes to
and-
this area, so you need to consider that as well.
There's also, if you notice, there's an inlet on the northern end. So there will be continuous water flow from the northern to the southern lobe and then, you know, to the dam. So I think that will help. When I was there on Sunday, it was moving. The water coming out of that pipe that was, you know, from the wetland that's adjacent to Route 9 was pumping some water into the pond. So I think that will continue to happen, and we'll have some water flow, certainly during some of the months.
That's a very good point, actually.
So let me ask a quick question. The
Microphone?
siphoning,
Microphone?
so the siphon's still there, you can see where will that always stay?
Yes, because the water level needs to stay, you know, below where it was previously to make sure that the dam is structurally sound.
Okay, so that always there, so that's how you monitor it, so you're not gonna throw in all these gorgeous new plants and then have them flooded again with the...
No,
with-
so we've committed to that in the mitigation and monitoring plan, and that was a great suggestion by the Conservation Board that we, you know, really be concerned about it. That it, you know, brought it to the top of our attention that, you know, we'll need to think about when preparing for storms and potentially lowering the water via a pump, not just the siphon. So that's something that we're looking into, but that is our obligation, is to make sure that the plantings are successful. And so eventually when they're established and strong, they're capable of being inundated without a problem. It's really the first couple seasons where they're getting established that we need to be really careful not to let the water rise during a storm and wash out the plantings, so.
And one more question, where do you siphon the water to? Where is it draining to?
To the stream. That's below the dam.
It just goes right over the driveway there and discharges to the stream on the other side of the dam.
When was the siphon put in? Does anybody know? Do you? Or when I'm saying, when was it put in? Was it put in before or after, what was it, July 8th, where we had the,
Oh, it's been there a couple of years, I think.
right, okay, so how did, the July 8th, how did the siphon, because it's not a giant pipe.
Cannot keep up with any
Okay.
Because, you know, I mean,
So, okay.
it recovers, it takes a few days to recover, brings it down. but
Margaret, can
it's-
you come up?
Okay,
So, again, the siphon doesn't keep up with many of the storms. Small storm events it can keep up with, but once you get to an inch or two, it's really, the level rises, not all the way, but it does rise, and then it keeps chugging along, and it discharges.
so what happens if we have, I don't like to use the term 100-year storm because we're having them all the time.
1%.
Right. What happens if we have, you know, even something like 6-8 inches of rain in a 24-hour period?
Right, so
How
we're
long would it
looking
take?
at a mechanical means of keeping the water level low.
So you're saying a pump, or would it make sense, or the dam is not stable enough to have a discharge pipe?
No, so the discharge, there was an existing discharge pipe that's not working. It's not cost efficient to put a discharge.
So
It
there's
would-
no, it's been looked at, there's no way to repair what was there,
Right. Yes.
because that would be sort of the ideal situation, rather than pumping.
But that would, then it wouldn't have to be lowered if we had a discharge pipe. We wouldn't be lowering the pipe, we wouldn't be lowering the pond, so.
Other comments, questions, requests?
Just cut something in the top of the dam, so when the water reaches that level, it goes out?
I'm not an engineer, but I've looked at that dam, and I think that would be tough to do on this one.
It's an old earthen dam. You
Yeah,
know,
it's-
one of the reasons that we kept the road where it is and kept the dam how it is so that we wouldn't have to build a bridge that would have disturbed wetlands coming onto that was a prior version of this project, so.
Oh, yeah, the water level. The roadway is much higher than any level of the pond. So it would never top it. It would flood on the side of the dam a lot before it would ever top. Feet.
So there are no other plans on changing that dam? You cannot do the pipe just because it's not cost effective? The discharge pipe? Correct. Okay.
So just as a question, so we have a major, 6-8 inches in 24 hours. The pond raises potentially, probably go up a good 6-8 inches. Are you going to keep a pump on premise, or is?
Yeah, I think the idea is before this planting plan goes into effect, we're gonna have a pump there.
Okay, so
Because
that.
nobody's gonna put this amount of money into that pond
Yep.
without it being there.
Okay,
And
so
the
then-
contractor's on the hook for all the plantings for.
Okay, so then let's add that in the plan. We don't need the specifics of what particular pump's
It's
going to be used.
sized.
Yeah.
right? I mean, we're
That'll be
comfortable.
part of the
Yeah.
maintenance.
Yeah. It
But
has
the
to.
best that you can give us, the size of the pump, the piping, so it's
Because then
there.
it's,
Yep.
we need to monitor that during the
Yep.
establishment period of the plants.
And so so I guess I'm confused, the pump would then essentially be the bypass.
It would be the bypass.
Pump will,
We would have to make room for 6 to 8 inches of water to come in. So the pump would help a lot compared to the siphon, and you could have a ball float in the pond to monitor where the level is to have the pump kick on automatically. But during big events that were forecasted, we would, we can put in the plan that we could proactively lower the water.
That makes sense.
Is there a generator on site? Because if you lose power, then the pump is,
Right. Something tells me the size of pump that you need is probably not going to be an electric pump. It's going to be diesel or propane. That's what I would guess. This is not small. Yeah. So if that could be in here, that would be great.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's really good. I didn't realize you were
Yeah.
gonna do that.
So, the sooner you can get revised material to us, the better, because If we have any questions or comments, it'll be distributed to everybody. We'll get back to you within days.
Okay.
So that we can get everything together for June.
Great.
Do you issue conditions
Yes.
with the permits?
Yes.
I'm just thinking of the landscape architect that's going to be revising the plan to move all the plants to the northern lobe. If we gave you a diagram for this next submission that showed our intention, would the final planting plan of the actual locations of the plants, like something like this, be okay for a condition? If we identified kind of, this is the area we're going to remove, and kind of like a bubble diagram, and this is the area we're going to plant in the northern lobe, or are you looking for the full planting plan in the next week?
I mean, the more you can give us, the better, but I thought that what we would be hopefully approving in June was a conditional plan, which is, you know, a conditional permit. It's getting you just about there, and at that point, hopefully, you're just working with Max to just finish whatever details need to be changed. Anything else?
So we just need to make sure that do we have noticing requirements since the public hearing is still, we're
No.
all set?
We're all-
good?
we're all
We're gonna
set.
be done in June with the hearing?
So I am hoping, yes.
Yes.
So, as I said, the sooner you can get us revised materials, the better, because this way, between all of us, we can see if there's anything missing or we thought of something, and we'll just have a dialogue and we can go back and forth and get this done.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
So, thank you for coming in. Okay. Do we have any old business? Yes, we should talk about a date for the site visits. Yeah, so the site visits would be the Hudson Highland Reserve and right by it to look at the subdivision on Lake Supplies Road. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Question? Oh. I mean, what's best for everybody? Weekend, weekday?
Weekend is definitely better for me. I gotta go to New
Yeah,
York now.
weekdays are hard for me.
The last?
Memorial Day weekend?
No, I thought Memorial Day weekend is early. It's not.
Yeah, I don't think it's the last weekend.
Yeah, where it's like it floats over.
27th, is it?
Yeah, I think that's, I know I'm, when am
Yeah,
I
it is.
traveling?
It is the
3rd.
27th.
I'm traveling the 3rd, so there's this other, what's it float in between May and June? How
Are you
about-
thinking first day of, well, the next week would be first
What is it, June
of
1st?
June? Yeah,
On Saturday? Yeah, I mean, how about June 1st, like a morning, June 1st, does that work?
I can do that.
That's gonna
So,
be
and we're gonna,
Lake Surprise.
where you going? Good for you. Where?
I've got relatives in Dundalk, I'm gonna see them, and then I'm gonna just to see that.
Nice.
Yes, have a good trip. Great.
So that's,
Gonna be,
what is it, Sprout?
it's gonna be Hudson Highlands Reserve
And
and
Lake
Lake
Surprise.
Surprise.
Yep.
Okay.
Tell me, I'm an early riser, so what time are you, everybody
9?
good? 9? Let's do 9. We're all good. 9. Great.
Very good. Which one first?
Good question.
Don't wanna show up first.
I would say let's do Hudson Highland Reserve first.
First, and then go to Lake Surprise?
of the building.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, do we have any old business? What's that?
June 1?
June 1st.
June 1st,
And where's this?
9 AM at Hudson Highlands Reserve.
right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, good night. Max, do you have anything before we close out?
Only to update the board that I met with the consultant that we're working with on the stormwater management plan for the town. And so we have a preliminary plan in place to start moving forward with getting our stormwater stuff up to speed. So, keep you posted.
Great.
Okay, with that said, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. All right, before we leave, we need to have a group picture.
What?